Fabulous. I always get the slot after dinner, which is when people are trying to find somewhere comfy to lie down. So thank you so much for inviting me. Anybody else turn up to the wrong Sheraton hotel? Just me? Just me then? Fabulous. Well, at least I'm here. So we're here to talk to these fabulous hearing aid manufacturers. So if anybody does say pardon more than twice, I will take it as a heckle. All right, just to say. But thank you so much for this fabulous opportunity. I got to host the last panel, which was really good. And they said, we'll bring him back again. Unfortunately, you've probably worked out I'm from Lancashire, which means I abuse most of my vowels. Now, bringing a Lancashire lad to London can only come with an apology or subtitles. So whoever's watching this back, I'm sure the team will put some E's and A's and I's at the bottom of it just to spread it out and such. But thank you so much for inviting me. We're going to keep this nice and informal, first of all. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to, if we've got time, of course, because there's a big clock here and I'm very conscious of it ticking down already, we're going to put some questions out to you in the audience. Sound like a good plan? Fabulous. What was that? All right, so it's like the fire alarm. So, first of all, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. So, Alice, can we start with you?
Yes, so my name's Alice Alkins. I work for Phonak and Unitron, managing the independent sector in the UK and Ireland.
Fabulous. Thank you, Alice.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Hinnigan. I'm the Director of Global Partnerships for Neurotone AI. We make Lace AI Pro, which you can see on our booth over in the corner over there. It is an auditory training app intended to be the physiotherapy that goes along with hearing aids for most hearing aid patients.
Thank you, Matt.
Hello, I'm Sunir Gawali. I'm Head of Sales for Strategic Accounts for WSA. For Signia and Widex.
Thanks, Sunir. And last but least, Paul.
Yes, my name is Paul Lamb. I work for Starkey UK. I am the Technical Director. And I've been at Starkey about half the age of BSHAA.
I can see the fingers and thumbs out there, Paul. Like, you don't look that old, so whatever your secret is, please share it with us afterwards. First question is from Matt. Matt, with remote and app-based care becoming more common, how can ads remain central to the hearing care pathway, especially in rural areas like Lancashire?
Well, I think the first thing I would say to any audiologist with this concern is that you have to remember how your patients see you. You have to understand your role in the eyes of that patient. It's easy when you're seeing a load of patients coming into the clinic to forget how they look on you. And they see you as the expert. They see you as the doctor of the ears. They see you as the person who is going to make a real difference to their life. And I think that with all of those challenges around things like remote audiology, all of the tools that come with the apps that are out there now, and the growing technology that is helping people in those areas, I think you have to remember that your role is absolutely key in tying together the hearing treatment that they're receiving. And I certainly know that from the app that we produce, which is helping people with their auditory processing once they've got their hearing aids and the patient is using from home, is another tool in the toolbox for audiologists who maybe are struggling to see their patients on a regular basis coming back into the clinic. But I think a lot of these technology solutions that are out there now are tools that you can lean into and that demonstrate the difference that you can provide in terms of the clinical care that's available from good quality audiologists like the ones we have in the room with us today.
Fabulous. Thank you, Matt. I will confess that I'm actually a paramedic by trade, and what I'm seeing now is a massive shift towards AI in differential diagnosis in hospitals and such. So I think in the next 12 months, 2 years, we're going to see a massive shift towards artificial intelligence and such. Fab. Alice. My grandma was called Alice. What a fabulous name. Are you ready?
I am.
Cool. So, Alice, how do you respond to concerns that direct-to-consumer models may erode clinical care standards in hearing and provision?
And this is a question that we get asked quite a lot. And I think, not to use exactly the same phrase, but to start with the why direct to consumer is there and how it's evolved. Whether we like it or not, the patients that we see in clinic are changing. Different generations have different ways of accessing healthcare. They have different ways that they want to get that provision, and that will change over time, whether we want to or not. And we've been talking about that since I started in the industry, when it was the upcoming boomers that were coming into the market, and now we're moving on to those next generations. And direct-to-consumer is there to give them the access in the way that they want to get it, and to lower that age where people are getting hearing aids for the first time, and to break down that stigma. What we need to do as an industry is make sure that the best practice guidelines, the best practice sharing is there as professional bodies, as manufacturers, as clinicians, so that provision can be done in the right way. It won't go away, it's there because those patients want it. What we need to do is make sure that the best practice is there so that those patients get the best possible journey with that access to care.
Thanks, Alice. Paul, so how are manufacturers validating new technologies like AI-driven self-fitting and remote adjustments against UK clinical standards than life such as RAMs?
Yes, Andrew. So just to address the question, I mean, research, if we think about all of us as manufacturers, is the number one priority in terms of our net spend. We have to develop products that are good for your patients, good for you, and good for us. If we get that wrong, we're all in trouble. Starkey, I can speak for Starkey in terms of research. The investment they make is huge in terms of looking at every part of that patient journey. So we're talking about AI-driven tools, we're talking about validating fittings. And with every research project, we have to take everything back to the bones and think, what are people doing in their clinics? It's okay making a great hearing aid, but if that doesn't work as you validate that with your tools, then we're going to miss some tricks here, aren't we? So the one big thing at Starkey is big time spent. I can give you a good example of a recent product trial, beta trials before release, and over 600 patients were involved in that trial. So it isn't just grabbing a few and seeing if that works. We're taking it seriously. We're definitely looking and outreaching to universities and other providers to make sure there's input from them as well. And what you also need to remember as manufacturers is we're bound by regulatory bodies. So MRHA, we've got the Hearing Industry Association in America, and also ISO as well, so that any research project, we're doing it correctly, not making false claims, and of course, being very considerate to those people taking part. So I think to touch on those 2 points about validation, we're certainly looking at every part of the process, and it might take 3 years to do it and get it right, but we'll carry on over those 3 years to make sure what we put out to market is the correct thing.
Fab, thank you. Sonia, as technology advances, how do you see the role of HADs evolving, and how can manufacturers support this shift in practice?
Yeah, I think it's all about adoption, isn't it? Similarly to previous questions, I think whether it's OTC or assisted technology in terms of remote care or otherwise, I think it's all about access and adoption. And I think these new features and new technologies really support that angle. I think if you look across to America, where OTC has been prevalent for a number of years now, we really haven't seen the shift that we all thought we'd see. And although we all think that the market there is massive for OTC, like I say, we haven't seen the adoption that we'd expect. So technology really supports all the audiologists to bring in more different type of clientele and continue to offer the patient various tools to support their needs.
Fab. Alice, back to you. How should the protected function be preserved or adapted in a market increasingly shaped by innovation, retail, influence, and patient self-management? Back to my NHS story, isn't it?
It is. And I think Sunir might have read my notes because I was going to say exactly the same thing for this answer. So I think what I would look to is conversations that we have with our colleagues over in America where OTC has been prevalent for a number of years now, and completely agree. We hear exactly the same thing, that the adoption is significantly lower than anybody expected. But I think one of the things that we found the most interesting is actually the return rate is much higher, because what we're seeing is that patients are going to that OTC product experiencing some benefit but not getting the level of support that they need to optimize their hearing. There is a reason that audiologists exist. We are there because patients need more than just a hearing aid. When I trained as an audiologist, one of the things I was always told was that the hearing aid was only about 10 to 15% of what I was going to do, and everything else was the counselling and everything else that went along with that role. And I now work for a manufacturer, so now apparently my role is only 15%, so go figure with that one. But the point is, you are all extremely important in that patient journey. And what we are finding with OTC is it's helping people realize that. They will go and get an OTC at a younger age. They will adopt that product quicker. They will then end up at your door because OTC is never going to be able to give them the same benefits as that 75, 80% of what you do on a day-to-day basis that sits outside of a hearing aid. So the market will change, it will adapt. It has done every year that I've been in it. But I think the core of this is that the differentiation of us as professionals and what we do to enhance that patient care, that's not going to change in the immediate future.
Fab. Paul, how are product lines addressing the needs of patients with more complex hearing or communication difficulties beyond basic amplification?
Okay, so when we think about product design, I think the frustrating thing for me occasionally is we see the mainstream product released and then a little bit later on we see maybe a power product released. But you have to think about a manufacturer and the kind of priorities. We know what the market share is like for receiver and canal today. We're over 72% of RICs fitted. Percentage of BTE is very small. But it brings me back to that point about catering for the needs of people with more severe hearing loss, communication difficulties, and the strategies have to be different. We know that. We know that we're looking at AI, for instance, at the moment. I think the fear from everybody is AI is taking control of the patient's hearing and they have no control over that. So in research, what we're looking to do is look at these different strategies in terms of the type of hearing loss and how we might need to treat that differently. Do we look at different types of fitting formulas that we need to adjust for that type of need to get the quality of sound to those people that really need it? In other areas, as a company, what we're really aiming to do is make products satisfactory and easy to use, but also add in some additional tools that might be necessary. So I don't know if any of you had read the Eurotrack report recently published. What's encouraging to see is people using phones and apps is on the increase. So it was around 22% the last survey that was done. We're up at 37% now in usage, with a great satisfaction level of around 70% of using those apps. Now, I know you all have your challenges with connectivity. However, when things are working well, people are very satisfied with the applications they might be using in conjunction with the hearing aids. So how does that help people with those difficult hearing levels that need addressing? How about if we start thinking about using the hearing aid and the phone together to improve sound quality? So using the phone microphone perhaps as your remote mic, traveling over the Bluetooth distance that we have, but also cleaning the sound before it reaches the hearing aid, and then the hearing aid doing further work afterwards. So that's a possibility now already. The other thing is they may have other health difficulties. So thinking about healthables in hearing aids. Healthables have been around since 2018, But if people can be using these features on a day-to-day to look at perhaps the condition of their health, the temperature, etc., that's certainly an additional tool in the toolbox to really help people. And then I think I'll finish with the final one, which I find is fascinating, and I'm wanting this to roll out a lot quicker, is the Auracast and LE audio capabilities that hearing aids now have. We're all supplying hearing aids now that can connect to long-range audio transmitters. So you think about people with severe, profound hearing loss, the critical distance that they need to hear well, maybe 1 to 2 meters. I can speak for myself. I was on a train a couple of weeks back, and there was an announcement on the train itself with the information eventually I got was that the train was going to be 25 minutes late. Couldn't hear a thing. Now, what if we could get every public venue eventually installed with long-range sound transmission for communication and listening difficulties? That's going to make such a big impact. And I know there's work going on already in the UK to roll these venues out and get them fitted. But I think we're still probably 2 or 3 years away to see that mainstream. So when it does get here, that's certainly going to be a game changer for hearing aid wearers.
Fabulous, thank you, Paul. I went to assess a patient a few months ago, and it was called Jack, and Jack had fallen and banged his knee, and he was sat in the corner of his room, and I tapped on the door and introduced myself, and his daughter answered the door, and I said, I've come to see Jack, and she said, oh, he's over there. And as I glimpsed over to Jack, he was sat in the corner in the chair, mumbling to himself. And I immediately turned my pad over from the musculoskeletal assessment to mental health act assessment, thinking, gosh, Jack's talking to himself in the corner. What I didn't realise was Jack was talking to his sister on the mobile phone that was at the other side of the room. But I just didn't realise that technology even existed. And I've been in the business a long time. I won't tell you my age because you'll work it out, but I've been in the business a long time. But yeah, I was perplexed at the fact that he connected to his phone at the other side of the room and was talking to his sister. And I was ready to detain him under the Mental Health Act. Anyway, there we go. So I've got a round robin question now for everybody. Shall we start with you, Alice? Are you ready? So, what more can the sector do to improve early identification and treatment of hearing loss in the UK, given persistent stigma and access issues?
I think I've probably already said my answer, because I think for me the changing routes in market are how we're going to allow more access. I think the important thing is that we make sure that they are accessible and that the journey is a positive one and not a negative one. That's the biggest thing. We do know that if people have a negative experience, then it is more likely to put them off. So I think the models where people have access as easily as possible, that's what's going to really improve those stats in the industry.
Fab, thanks, Alice. Matt, what's your thoughts?
I think that, as Alice already said, people are going to access the services that they need in the way that makes the most sense for them. So I think there's an awful lot that the industry can do to advertise what it is that makes you special. I think, you know, there are lots of tools now available in the toolbox for audiologists to differentiate yourselves and to demonstrate the level of service that you can provide. And as the consumer goes through that journey of educating themselves about what it is they need, they're more and more likely to find you at that point.
Fab. Sadir, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, likewise, it's hard to say anything different from my previous answer and what the guys have already said, but it's all about access, and ultimately we've got free hearing aids in the UK, and still we see the adoptions is quite low. So, yeah.
It does get harder as it gets closer to the end, doesn't it? Paul?
I'm going to go back to the Eurotrack report, which was quite promising in actual fact. When we look at adoption of hearing aids, we know there's awareness work we need to do out there, but people surveyed in that survey of the people that had hearing loss, 50% of them had tried hearing aids, which is an increase in the previous survey. So I think there's headway being made. I think from everyone here, not just manufacturers, it's all about promoting the benefits. It's talking about success of hearing aids. The stigma, I think, has been around forever. Ever since I worked at Starkey, we're all trying to get over this stigma of what hearing aids look like. certain adverts don't help us, do they, when we see the beige bananas? But I think the other routes, and I know BSHAA are working on this, is better awareness perhaps at the first point of call, so maybe GP education and awareness. BAA, BSHAA are trying to work out a plan for the future so that access to hearing care is more immediate. Staggeringly, I met a patient last week who was wearing NHS hearing aids, only needed her tubes replacing, and she'd been waiting 8 months for a phone call. So it's very much improving service, but also improving that access more quickly, and also promoting the benefits of hearing aids.
Fab. Thanks, Paul. And our last round-robin question. Are you ready, Alice? So, what future do you see for the protected function of hearing aid dispensed in the UK, particularly with changing access models and technology?
I think that the protected function, and I think just probably echoing some of the points that we've already made on this, I think to your point, I think it is around differentiation and finding those elements that make sure that there is an awareness of what the role is. Because I think for patients out there, they don't know before they come into the industry what they should expect from someone that they're seeing. They don't know the protected function versus what isn't a protected function within audiology. And I think that's where this awareness comes of making sure that we find and that professionals find a way to make sure that that knowledge is there within the end users accessing audiology.
Fab. Thank you, Alice. Matt?
So I think I'd return to an earlier point that I made, which is about how the patient sees you. The reason, Alice touched on it, Sunir touched on it, that OTC hasn't changed fundamentally the clinical audiology model, even though many expected that it would, is because the patient needs that human interaction. They need that guidance. They need to be taken on the journey that only really their audiologist can do for them. So as we look at things like technology that's coming into the audiology sector, I don't think we should just see it as disruption. I think we should see it as enabling the audiologist too. And I think there's a responsibility that's incumbent on us as the providers of that to produce solutions that actually help audiologists spend more time and have better interactions with patients rather than seeing technology as an end in itself. Too often you see particularly software solutions where it's like we're building this thing so that you'll spend loads of time looking at it, and actually when we're designing our solution, we don't look at it like that at all. We want the audiologist to be talking to the patient and having a good interaction with the patient. So I think something the sector should demand from suppliers is that they're providing things that fuel that and that help them to interact in better ways with their patients and support taking their patients on the journey that they need to go on to better hearing.
Fabulous. Thanks, Matt. I do remember, is anybody old enough here to remember a shop called Tandy? You used to be able to buy a hearing aid box, and it was probably about the size of this, that would swing around your neck like that with a beige pair of earphones that you go up. And I do remember very early on in my career, and I'm not telling you how long it was again, because you'll quite clearly guess my age. There used to be lots of patients would go to swinging with these Tandy boxes around their necks. And I just said to them, have you thought about maybe going to see an audiologist or going to see a hearing aid dispenser? And they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, okay. I mean, we're talking like late 80s, early 90s, so it's a long time ago. You're going to work my age out now, aren't you, Alice?
No, I wouldn't dare.
Thank you.
Can I
Say it.
add something? Sorry, really quickly, just on that point, because it came up recently. We were talking about AI, which is maybe a slight deviation from the topic here, where we've really talked more about OTC and direct to consumer. But I think one of the buzzwords that's been in the industry for a while is around AI within product. But I think what I think is really exciting within our industry and healthcare in general is how we can use AI to mean that you have more time to talk to those patients in front of you. I had a very interesting conversation recently, which was around an audiologist who had used some AI software and had inserted the guidelines on referrals. And all that they needed to do was then upload the audiogram and it would write the referral letter. So something that would have taken maybe half an hour to sit and go, right, exactly what reason am I referring this one and make sure it was a nicely written letter, took them seconds, which meant they had more time to be doing the thing that really matters, which is interacting with the patients and making sure they have the best experience. And I think when we talk about all these areas, it's how do we make sure that we are harnessing them for the good bits and making sure that we use them to allow us more time to do the bits that really make a difference.
Fabulous. Yeah, I can definitely see it's not going away, is it? Anybody who doesn't want to embrace this AI train needs to smell the coffee, as I would refer to it. Sunil, what's your thoughts on the question?
Again, hard to not disagree with Alice and Matt. Completely agree with everything they said. I think it's all about, a big part of your jobs is the relationship with your clients. And obviously, if technology can support to give you more time to have that relationship and listen to your patients more, then great.
Fabulous. And last but not least, Paul?
I'll echo what the other three have said. I mean, it's difficult to add to that. We're, as manufacturers, wanting success for you, we want success for your patients, your customers, and obviously for ourselves as well. So anything that can be done to make you feel safe in your job environment, fitting hearing aids, getting the right results, whether it be AI, remote fittings. Actually interesting, remote fittings, I'm going to go back to the survey again, but it was interesting to read how low a percentage patients knew about remote fine-tuning. So we spend months on end designing these systems. I think the usage is very low. And that's probably a testament to you out there. You'd rather see your patients, right? So it's there when it's inconvenient to see one of your patients, but face-to-face is always far better, isn't it? So the tools are there when you need them, but it goes back to the great job you do to have that face-to-face care.
Fabulous. Thank you, Paul. That's all for questions. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes spare. Shall we, because there's a very clear topic of artificial intelligence here, isn't it, AI, so maybe while we've got 4 or 5 minutes spare, shall we go out to our audience and ask whether you have any experience in the world of AI within your practice, and what's your initial thoughts on where it might be utilised for the future? Can I just get a microphone to you? Is that all right?
Lovely, thanks. I was just wondering how you see AI in the future in the hearing aid. What it's likely to be able to do, apart from noise reduction, other levels of sophistication in a hearing aid. What do you reckon? Any ideas? Your company's working on it now?
It's top secret, can't tell you.
All right, okay. I'll find out next month. Find out next month, Paul.
I think just to touch on your question, AI can do some great. If we focus on hearing aids, the reason why we're seeing AI in hearing aids, the processing and performance of hearing aids in the past without AI has been pretty good. Where perhaps we haven't been so precise is understanding the sound environment where the listener is in. And that's where AI is going to play a big part. Understanding what you're walking into, what you need to hear, habits of the patient, all kinds of different things we can be using in the usage data of the hearing aid to then get AI to work to maybe guide them to the next step. So there's many things we can do, even teaching patients how to use hearing aids, understanding what they're doing and guiding them in the right direction. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else, any more experience of AI in the workplace that wants to share the stories with us? The goods, the bads, the uglies, Nope. Like a tumbleweed moment, isn't it? Well, I personally think it's going to be here to stay. I'm very lucky that I work as a senior in NHS for NHS England in its current form. And we are just currently adopting it for patient consultations, both remotely and in hospitals, primary care surgeries, if you can get a GP appointment in this day and age, that is, of course. I can say that out loud because I'm not with any clinicians in the NHS factor. So that all I was going to say is thank you very much indeed. Can we have a massive round of applause for our fabulous panel? Paul, Sunil, Matt and Alice, thank you so much. I think we've made a bit of time up there because we've managed to recuperate about 4 or 5 minutes. So, you want a photo? Oh. Not supposed to be here today, Alice. Just joking. Yes, we can have a photo. Do you want to do it here on stage or?
Yeah, whenever.
All right, cool. Do you want us to go to the side to do it, or wherever you want us to go?
Just on the stage.
Fabulous. Okie dokie. Right, I shall hand over to the next person. I'm not sure where Alex is. Is she just gone outside, maybe? just grab, yeah, I think she may be outside. We've talked really quick, so we've managed to get through that really quite fast. Has anybody experienced AI yet in the NHS setting? Has anybody within primary care or secondary care, A&E departments, urgent care centres? Yeah, it's definitely coming. She could be changing her batteries. Finished too early. I have no response to that, Jane. Oh, we have a question. Could be for you, this, Paul.
Well, just touching on what the panel's been saying, that the audiologist is central, it's the human interaction, and we're talking about using AI in our processes and within the hearing aids. But as both the earlier morning presentations were about clinical applications, surely a big win will be being able to automate all these tests, because time's against us. So when you can put them in and the audiologist is there, or the HCA, making sure that the temp is set, that the REM set are there, but the process are done automatically. AI will actually, just as you talked about, actually coming up with what the red flags are and so on. But all that should happen in a very short time. It's just a question of supervising that the things are set up correctly, and then it's the job of the audiologist to help interpret that to the patient and make a plan of how you can actually take all that information that would normally take several visits or a long time, with the patient getting tired. The potential to get so much diagnostic information in a very quick and user-friendly way, I think that's where a massive breakthrough will happen. But I can imagine we'll all be frightened of losing our jobs. Whereas the reality is, it's how we interact with them, having the knowledge what those results actually mean, rather than just a trite sentence. I'd like to know what you think about that.
It's a good point, Alan. I might go back and ask you the question, are we not taking away some of your skills by making it so automated? And I think we can do many things in hearing aids now than just make them amplify. Speech mapping tools, in situ audiometry. But how about all the other tools you use in your clinic? Is that taking it away from you, if you catch my drift?
I don't think so. I can see that's what we're all frightened about. But what it actually means is that we get a lot more data, and we can actually figure out how to interpret it, and actually what pieces of important information is what is important for the planning of the treatment for the patient. So, it's kind of like, oh, no, we can't have an automated knitting machine. Terrible. Automation, audiometry, it's not that challenging, but we need to make sure everything is applied correctly, that the headphones are on, the insert tips are on, whatever other probes, and there's the potential to use other probes, that the placement takes time, and then the interpretation of the results, so they don't get done. Talked about TENS tests. Really very important information. How often does it get done? So instead of being worried about that, embrace the potential to automate it, and then use that information to optimize the results. And the patient will need support, and they'll need adjustment, because the computer won't get it right for everybody, so you have to know how to make those adjustments. I'd love to know what our thoughts are, but I don't think we should be frightened, because it will happen anyway. And rather than to go into an automated booth in a train station or wherever, the high street, and have no interface with hearing care professionals, Why not bring it into our clinics? I mean, I want to see the time when we do tinnitus diagnostics where we can, read the brain waves, get genetic testing by taking a skin test, put it in a machine, get all that data back, and be able to then apply all that information. And genetics is for hearing as well. How many hearing conditions are genetically driven? We won't be able to do that by sending it to a lab and coming back and all the rest of it. But with automation, it's amazing what the future could hold.
I think you're probably about 50 years ahead of all of us there, Alan. But you're completely right.
Maybe 5, 10.
I think it's all about adoption, isn't it? And I think, like you say, it's very rare that in a lifetime that we see a whole new industry being born. And I think obviously we've seen that with AI. I think you've got to embrace it. And if it's going to give you time or technology or whatever it brings you, I think it's, as I say, it's all about embracing it and bringing it into the clinic. We've already seen it with software where we make suggestions either with auto-fit and doing the REM for you, or suggesting what dome you should fit on a specific fitting. And I think that's obviously going to continue to grow with AI and having more suggestions and support. So yeah, completely agree.
But I have to disagree with you on just one point there, Sunil. I don't think Alan is 50 years ahead of the rest of us. I think it's coming quicker than that. And I think from my own experience, what we've been seeing is we're delivering auditory training and we're using AI to power that. And for the audiologists that we're doing that with, we're enabling them to bring something back into their clinical practice that has dropped out of their process, because we all know the most important commodity to a modern audiologist is their time. And it's really hard to get through all the things that you might like to get through. Chris talked about Quick Sin 10 earlier, and Alan touched on it in his question. These are things that if you were to ask an audiologist, do you believe in that? They would say, absolutely. But then the question, do you do it routinely? Often you would find that audiologists would say, no, I don't have time to fit that into my consultations. So I think AI has a lot of power, as we are trying to do with Laser Eye Pro, to bring things back into your clinical practice and process that you haven't been able to include because of some of those pressures that all audiologists feel in their consultations.
Just to clarify, I meant with the swabs, but
oh, okay.
Not with the AI.
Yeah, I don't want to disagree with you on that one, and I don't have an opinion about swabs.
Look what we've started now. So let me just summarise AI for you. I was in clinic last week. I did 2 days in a GP surgery, and they've just embraced AI within their world. AI is very good. It created me a checklist. It was a gentleman who came in with some back pain. It ruled out all the things that I'd ruled out. It highlighted some red flags that I needed to consider. But most of all, and most important to that, it's centric to you, the clinician or the person that's doing that consultation. Because without you and your intuition or your clinical skills and diagnostics, AI is just another tool, I think, in the box. But actually, it helps reduce some of those risks by highlighting some of those things. What I have to say is it produced me a clinical report afterwards that was significantly way beyond my years of experience that I could produce. So, yeah, I think we're going to be embracing it for the future. Again, thank you for the panel, Liz Ellen. Look, I've gone 3 minutes over now. Terrible.